Hey guys, it's Lee Taylor. That's the 2021 Volkswagen Golf 8 GTI, and this is a Right Lane review. Since 1974, the Volkswagen GTI has been synonymous with hot hatch goodness. 8 generations, a turbo, and a dual clutch transmission later, the GTI still turns heads. The Mark 8 GTI offers all the benefits of the Mark 8 Golf platform, which means brand new tech, and in this car, a completely upgraded drivetrain. But as of late, the GTI has lost its top performer status to cars like the Type R, Renault Sport, and the newcomer Hyundai's Envision. So if this isn't the top performance hot hatch, where does it fit in? I think the GTI is the gentleman's hot hatch. Now, what I mean by that is that this car is definitely not a track weapon. It's not designed to be a track weapon. Its idea and its premise was not to be a track weapon. If you want one of those, you go buy a trophy or an inn. It was designed to be a car that could be lived with every single day and still have fun up in the canyons. And I think it probably checks most of those boxes pretty well. Around town, the car feels great. It's a Golf. What else do I need to say? Everything feels lovely, it's comfortable, it's calm in comfort mode, it's easy to live with, the park tech's great, the safety tech is phenomenal, forward collision warning, rear collision warning, IQ Drive, which has all the new adaptive cruise control, the adaptive light systems, everything you'd ever want in a high-spec Golf is here. Everything. This car's got luxury pack, so I have heated and cooled seats. I got a heads-up display, Harman Kardon thanks to Sound and Vision pack. There's nothing missing in this GTI from a day-to-day car. You could drive this car for hours and be completely comfortable at every speed you can possibly think of that's within Australian legal limits and some that aren't. But dynamically, the car is also really good. It's capable of producing some serious G-loads in the corners. They've done some really interesting things with the engine and the transmission and the drivetrain in general. The car just feels like it belongs on the road as an athletic hatchback. And there's some really interesting trick things going on with the dynamics. So you have 3 main things that have been updated. One is the main drivetrain. So you have the Volkswagen 2-liter TSI engine, 180 kilowatts, 370 newton meters of torque. I reckon it's probably making a little bit more. Those numbers seem conservative to me, and it feels like it's a bit faster and a bit more powerful than what they're suggesting, which wouldn't surprise me. It's Volkswagen Group after all. They've added new technology to the front differential, so now you have a electronically controlled front locking differential, which actually varies how much it locks depending on inputs, steering, all this other stuff. So it helps the car exit corners and be more stable mid-corner, and you can tell it working. You can feel it working when you're really pushing on the car. And they also have added dynamic chassis control and extended the abilities of dynamic chassis control. So now it's fully adaptive, and you have the option to either run on the comfort side of things or on the sport side of things, depending on what drive mode you're in. And you have 4 different drive modes. You have Eco, which is pretty much what it sounds like, try to be as economical as possible with a turbocharged 2-liter. Comfort mode, where everything's kind of calmed down, the dynamic chassis control stays in a more refined fashion. It's still pretty stiff, but refined no less. The car calms down, doesn't make a lot of noise. The gearbox sort of works a bit more smoothly. It doesn't really feel that much different when you have a DSG that's fast. And in sport mode, you have full attack. Everything's on. The car's powering through gear changes. It's holding the gears a little bit longer. You can change gears on your own with the paddles on the back, which are incredibly responsive. And this is probably one of the best, if not the best, front-wheel drive dual clutch gearbox out there. It's just brilliant. It works every single time, no matter what speed. And it has very occasionally an issue with some of the low speed stuff, but most of the time, brilliant. And then you come to the actual feel of the car. Now, as I said before, this is not a track weapon. It was not designed to be a track weapon. It's designed to be a everyday car that also goes onto the mountain roads. So this car is lacking a few things for me. Probably the number one at the moment, though, is a bit of soul. So this car can, tick mark every single requirement dynamically that you would want something out of this sort of chassis. and does it really well, but it doesn't feel like it's enjoying itself, if that makes any sense. It's like that friend you have who's really good at academic things, and they go through, and you're like, oh, you did that? Yep, did that. And this? Yep, did that. Yep, and that's it. That's all the response is. No, oh, I loved it. There's none of that. It's just, yep. So the car can do it, it just doesn't feel enthusiastic about it. And part of that is some engagement pieces. So the noises are probably my number one annoyance. It's piping fake sound into the cabin because the outside sounds like a 1990s Hyundai 2-liter, which is not a great place to be. Granted, when you're on it, it does, let out the DSG fart whenever it changes gear. And that's a nice touch. You want to get those bangs out of the engine whenever you're in a dual clutch transmission. And it will also occasionally let out a little tiny backfire on a downshift. Now, that one little backfire actually annoys the crap out of me because it doesn't happen when it should. So the car goes down a gear, the revs fly up, and you're waiting. You're like, oh, it should pop here. It's like, nope. And then pop, just one pop. And you're like, that doesn't sound very natural. It's like some little man in the engine bay is going, oh, he went down a gear. Get the backfire, get the backfire. Just one. Okay, cool, we did it. That was it. That's all that happened. Cars like the Trophy, Renault Sports, the i30N, and even really the Type R, if you lean on it, will make a bit more noise and be a bit more engaging because, well, quite frankly, they've been designed to do that, but they haven't been this obviously designed. And I know that the modern engineers spend time to make the engines more charismatic, but they kind of missed the mark for me on this one. It's just too obviously fake. Just tighten it up a little bit, guys, you'll be fine. But if I pull those two dichotomies of this car together, you have this vehicle that's incredibly poised, incredibly well thought out for the most part, incredibly easy to live with. It feels very mature. It actually feels more like a sporty Audi in here than it does a Volkswagen GTI, which is probably high praise for a product that's considerably cheaper than an Audi. I would suggest that if you're after a hot hatchback, which you can occasionally have fun up the mountain in, but most likely it's going to spend most of its days on the school run, and you want to be comfortable, the GTI is pretty much it. It does everything well. I just personally wish it was a little bit more excited about it. So how's the cockpit on the GTI? Well, to start with, it is the new Golf 8 platform, so it has that same sort of minimalistic effect with all the haptic controls, which are a little bit quirky to use, but you kind of get used to it. You sit in these beautiful sport seats, and these are part of the luxury pack in this nice Vienna leather, and they're heated and cooled. You're behind a nice sport wheel with haptic controls as well, which is also heated thanks to the luxury pack. A beautiful digital driver's display, which has a GTI specific screen on the GTI model. And on this car, we have Sound and Vision, which is the Harman Kardon and the heads-up display along with the sunroof. Throughout, it's pretty typical Golf from there. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all wirelessly, a wireless charging pad, along with a little light cover so your phone doesn't go flying out when you're accelerating. And it is a very nice cabin to be in, despite some of the haptic bits, and just overall, really good spot. So how's the back seat on the GTI? Well, to start with, it's pretty much typical Golf for the most part. The big difference though is the seats, because you have the nice big sport seats in front of you. You do lose a little bit of knee and leg room, but they still have the pockets. And the design is carried across into the back seat as well, so you have the lovely, nice red stitching on the leather. Overall, it's quite comfortable though. You have your own zone of climate and a couple of USB-C chargers, as well as some cup holders and armrests like the normal Golf. So it's quite practical and comfortable for a little bit of a drive. So how's the boot in the back of the GTI? Well, luckily it's a Golf after all, so it's nice and practical, which means it has plenty of space on the back for a couple of bags. The seats do fold down flat for larger items, as well as plenty of storage under the load floor, which has two settings, a higher setting for normal and a lower setting for taller items, plus there's a space saver spare. So all in all, typical Golf and very practical. So what's my tops, bottoms, and final verdict for the 2021 Golf GTI? Well, on the bottom are a few things to consider, especially in the hot hatch segment. One is the fact that this car is not offered with a manual transmission, which is a little bit of a letdown for me personally, an enthusiast. Some of the technology, though fantastic to use, is a bit touchy thanks to the new haptic controls, so you have to get used to it. On top of that, it has those weird fake engine noises that I'm just not a fan of in general, and it lacks a little bit of soul. Very capable, but lacking soul. So what's on top for the GTI? Well, to start with, it's a Volkswagen, so it's capable at every speed, particularly with the new dynamic chassis control, which means the car can soften down around town and be nice and taut up in the mountain roads. It feels pretty good around town as well. It makes it a fantastic daily driver and has more of a gentleman's attitude rather than a set your hair on fire. And despite being underpowered against its main rivals, it still feels pretty good, and that seems to be a little bit of German magic. So what's my final verdict on the 2021 Volkswagen GTI? Well, I have to admit, it is not the top performer, particularly when it has competitors as strong as some of the others, but it does have a fantastic daily driving mentality. So if you want a hot hatch with a gentleman's demeanor, but also some fun up in the mountain roads, definitely check the GTI out.